the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, taking a look at today's 5-game slate, and it's not a pretty one. Doesn't look like a fun one. You do have your high-scoring game of Golden State and Houston sitting at 230 for a total. But you're also looking at some games like Miami and San Antonio. Neither are appealing offenses for fantasy. Both played a slow pace, both dealing with some injuries up front, so that's going to be one to keep an eye on, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And also Dallas, Utah, just a 185 total, but I actually like that game a bit more than San Antonio and Miami. They just have some better fantasy options who can produce a little bit more despite the low total. You do have Milwaukee and Boston sitting at 208 with the Celtics as just 4.5-point favorites, so no blowout concern there. Knicks Washington's another one that's looking like a really juicy game from both sides. I like that one sitting at 207, and Washington just favored by a point. So Golden State are 14.5-point favorites. It's really your only blowout concern tonight. So you're just kind of looking at these games. You really like those three. You like Milwaukee, New York, and Golden State. The games there, and Dallas is kind of your value area if you're looking to go a little bit lower. Maybe picking one on both sides. You're not getting too heavy. And Spurs in Miami. I mean, really outside of Kawhi Leonard. I'm not looking at much tonight. I mean, just depending on how the front court shapes up, because you could see some David West, you could see some Marty Stoudemire, just depending on the injury news going forward. But we'll break that down right now. Looking at point guards, not a lot of injuries to deal with tonight. Just Trey Burke. He's been already ruled out with an illness, and we've seen Raul Neto pick up some really heavy minutes of late. So he's kind of on my radar for a punt play tonight just because it's a pretty weak slate in general. But he's played 37 minutes last game, played 33 the game before, 27 and 32. So seeing better minutes. He's had over 20 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. So he's not a bad option against Dallas, who have struggled against point guards this season. So at that price tag, I don't really mind him tonight, especially if you're paying up for guys like Harden, Curry, Draymond, those types of guys. Tonight he's going to fit into your lineups. He's the only real injury concern. You're looking at Steph Curry, priced a little bit higher than John Wall, but I do like John Wall tonight. I think, Washington, their offense is really filtered through him, especially of late. I mean, he's absolutely been cruising, averaging 23, 6, and 10 over the last 5 games. I like him at a cheaper price tag than Curry tonight. Not expected to be in a blowout, and you're looking at the Knicks. I mean, they've been awful of late. They've allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing point guards in the last 10 games. They've also allowed over 104 points per game in the last 10. So there was a reason why Derek Fisher got fired. It was because the defense has been just horrid. So I really like Wall tonight over Curry. Curry, it's looking more like a Thompson and Draymond Green night for the Warriors, if anything. So if you're going a little bit cheaper, Boston and Milwaukee, they carry in some guys that we've known put up, fantasy points in the past, but you're looking, it's not a great matchup on both sides. I mean, Isaiah Thomas is kind of outmanned on that Michael Carter-Williams defense there. The length isn't there. You saw that last time they played because he just shot 6 of 20, 1 of 10 from 3. Did put up 20 fantasy points, but he did not put up anything else. 1 assist and 2 boards. So I think it's a tournament play for me. I'm not going to really trust him in cash. I'd rather pay up for Wall, rather go down for Neto if you're creating a little bit more of a balanced lineup, but kind of more just a contrarian move tonight just because I think the matchup is not there on both sides. If you're looking at other guys, Marcus Smart would kind of match up nicely. He's been playing well over the last 6 games, playing bigger minutes, 12, 3, and 3 in the last 6 games on average, shooting the ball a little bit better. He always has that big-time steal upside, so that's nice. I think he's a little bit riskier. I still think I'd rather be paying down for guys like Raul Neto. Patty Mills has been kind of getting a consistent minute bump with Ginobili, 22. Saw 15 minutes in the blowout against Dallas, but 24 and 21 against Orlando. So kind of sits in the low 20s, but a great fantasy points per minute player. 23, 22, 20, and 37 in the last 4 games. Not a bad option if you're punting again, but I still think Neto's the easy option with the heavier minutes. Moving over to shooting guard, James Harden is questionable, according to DraftKings, but more probable tonight because the Vegas line's already out. Even though it's 14.5-point favorites, it would be a lot higher than that if Harden was sitting. I think he's a tournament play tonight because he hasn't been extremely efficient against Golden State this season, and they've been tough on shooting guards. They limit them to a really poor field goal percentage, so I'm not exactly intrigued with paying up for him tonight, especially if I'm paying up in other areas. Um, you're kind of looking at him late. He really had a great game against Phoenix. Had a great game against Portland, struggled against Phoenix in the last two. Um, the peripherals have been down a little bit since Howard's coming back. He's only had 9 assists in the last 2 games after having double-digit assists in the previous 2 games. So tougher matchup. I'm not quite sure I'm going to be paying over 10K to him. I do like Klay Thompson and Cashnet. I also like Brad Beal. Both are in great spots against poor backcourt defenses. Both can light it up. Beal's going to get a 30-minute limit tonight. Still not bad at his price, just 6,100 on DK there, 5,900 on FanDuel, so it's not a bad price for him. I really don't mind it. I also, like I mentioned, I mean, that Jazz Dallas game, I think there's just better fantasy producers in there than Heat Spurs, and I kind of like Rodney Hood as a nice mid-tier option tonight. But I think if you're looking on DK, Evan Turner is your guy at shooting guard. Averaging 13, 6, and 6 in the last 6 games. He's a guy who matches up better with the Milwaukee size. A little bit more than Bradley, a little bit more than Isaiah Thomas. I mean, you look at the last game, he played 28 minutes and went exactly what he's been doing. 13, 5, and 6 with 4 steals in the last game against Milwaukee. He's just a consistent minute getter. He's going to get 28 minutes. You like this total tonight. You like both sides. I mean, Milwaukee's defense has been bad, to say the least. So I think he's just kind of an easy plug and play for me tonight on both sides. Or FanDuel, he's small forward as well. If you're looking cheaper, Aaron Aflalo, I mean, if you want to talk about minutes, it's him. I mean, last 4 games, he's been getting over 40 minutes per game. And he kind of needs all those when Melo's out there to really hit his value. Because other than that, I mean, if you take away 10 minutes of this time, I mean, Aflalo is pretty much worthless. But 29, 23, 35, and 26 in the last 4 games. And he kind of sits around that 15, 6 and 3 mark, night in and night out. I like the price. I like the matchup against Washington. Really struggled. They've allowed a high field goal percentage. So hopefully we can see Aflalo get hot there. And you kind of like his play. If you're looking at guards in that Spurs Heat game, it's not fun. I mean, you look at Danny Green, who's got a little bit of a bigger bump with Ginobili out. Still not a real threat on offense there. Tough matchup against Miami. Obviously, Dwayne Wade as well. So I'm not quite paying up for that price tag when Klay Thompson's in the better matchup. It's pretty ugly everywhere else. So I think you're looking at that option of just going hard on Thompson, Beal, Hood, and Turner. I don't mind Avery Bradley as well. I think he's a little bit more risky just because we've seen his floor drop to a lower spot than we've really liked it, especially in tougher matchups where he's seen some decent defenders in good length. So I'm kind of hesitant on him tonight. We're a small forward. Melo, probable, no issues with him going tonight. Love him against Washington. He, after a small forward spot last night, he's kind of an easy call tonight. Even though he's not been shooting the ball well of late, averaging 19, 10, and 5, shooting just 33% in the last 5 games. And you're looking at him tonight. I mean, Washington, I mean, they've been god-awful against small forwards. They've allowed the most fantasy points per game. They've allowed the highest field goal percentage. So that should help that 33 field goal percentage jump up tonight. I mean, he's averaging still over 40 fantasy points a game. I love his price tag on DK at just 8,400. Obviously, a matchup against Washington there is definitely in his favor. I do like San Antonio, Kawhi Leonard there. Starting to see a bigger bump in minutes because blowouts have not been there. We saw that. I thought the Lakers, were going to get blown out by the Spurs area after we saw what happened to Dallas the night before. So, you look at Kawhi, he puts up 43, DK points in that game. So when he sees over 30 minutes, Kawhi Leonard is always a great play. Doesn't look like Luol Deng is going to play tonight. That's questionable for him. Not that Deng is in play, but that would just kind of help Leonard see a weaker offense of guys like Justice Winslow, and guys like Gerald Green. So guys he should usually dominate. If you're looking for kind of a safer cash game option, I like Gordon Hayward. I still like to limit my spots in this game, so you're picking one or the other. Hayward's been quietly consistent over the last 5 games. He always is, averaging 19, 6, and 3. Shooting 44% from the field, not bad, but not great. Decent matchup against Dallas. I don't think Dallas's defense is, great overall. I mean, they rank 18th in opponent field goal percentage. They rank in the middle of the league in 101 points per game. So I think we're going to see this game actually outscore San Antonio, Miami tonight, and just be a better fantasy game target overall. So I don't mind Hayward if you need to come down off Anthony, but Melo just has that upside that I don't really want to fade tonight. If you're looking for a GPP guy, Giannis, Alphabet, Greek Freak, whatever you want to call him, facing Boston, who's struggling against small forwards this season. And Giannis has a lower floor than most would like, but as we've seen, I mean, he definitely has 40-plus fantasy point upside, especially in this matchup. Been a little bit up and down lately, but still averaging 19, 5, and 3 over the last 4 games. The Bucks starters always play heavy minutes, so it's always nice to count on. He's averaged 38 in the last 4 games, so he's going to be out there as long as he's not into foul trouble. You like that play. If you're going a little bit cheaper, Jay Crowder's really come down in production of late. Just 18, 15, and 27, and 24 fantasy points in the last 4 games there. Hasn't been great. The steals have been down. Not exactly in play for me. I still rather target Evan Turner as kind of that shooting guard small forward role, and then maybe take a shot at their big men. It's kind of tough to get around. I don't mind Isaiah Thomas in tournaments like I mentioned, but you want to get some exposure to the high total, but I think it's going to be kind of tricky. I think Turner's your safe play, and then we'll look a little bit later at a guy I like in tournaments as well. Looking at some minutes, Corey Brewer, with Houston kind of going small of late with Terrence Jones out, you've seen Ariza shift over to the 4. I fully expect that to happen tonight against a smaller Warriors team, but Brewer playing more at the 3, he's getting bigger minutes. I mean, 28, 25, 33, 30, 30 in the last 5 games there. So I really like him as just a filler play at small forward tonight. Not shooting, especially well from 3, which usually he gets on, but 45% from the field, averaging 13, 2, and 2 with 1.2 steals per game in the last 5. I like him in this matchup. He's probably going to get run in the blowout too. So I think he's kind of a safe option for small forwards and a safe option to be a punt filler tonight. Looking elsewhere, I mean, Harrison Barnes, he would be in play for me tonight. Still seeing 34 minutes over the last 4 games. He kind of sits in that low floor tier as well, but he does have upside. You could see him get over 25 fantasy points tonight at that price. Not a bad option against Houston, LA taking shots wherever you can get him in this game. Just kind of hopefully navigating the blowouts. I think Barnes is still a safe play either way. Moving to power forward, and obviously Draymond Green comes in as your top option with Houston, allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing power forwards. And I mean, Green's absolutely torched Houston this season. He's only shot the ball 15 times in 2 games against them, only averaging 9 real points against them this season, but averaging 11 assists and 9 rebounds with 3.5 blocks plus steals per game. So averaging nearly 47 points a game in 2 against Houston this season. Price is still up there, but he's also just a great play. He's my top Warriors option tonight. I love getting exposure to Green, who never really seems to get burned in the blowouts there. Looking a little bit cheaper, Porzingis playing great basketball of late. Seen heavier minutes, 35 and 38 in the last 2, coming off back-to-back 40-point games. Not a tough matchup against Washington, or a little bit banged up down low. Porzingis definitely just a GPP play because we know his floor, but he definitely has that upside, especially on FanDuel where his price is below 7K. So I do like him there a little bit more than DK, but he's still definitely in play. I think your safer option is obviously Derek Favors. Great matchup against Dallas. You look at Favors, I mean, he's been playing great basketball. The blocks have been there, averaging 3.2 per game in the last 5, and just quietly averaging 14, 10. Night in and night out. Great matchup against Dallas tonight. They've struggled against power forwards. So Favors is my favorite Jazz player tonight if you're trying to get some exposure. I mean, Dallas ranks 25th in rebounding, so they allowed the 18th highest, or they rank 18th in opponent field goal percentage. So I think it's a pretty safe play for him tonight in that matchup, because you're really not liking guys like Chris Bosh as much in this matchup. Aldridge is playing well lately, but still, I'm not a big fan at that price. I'd rather go with the other options in that area. And if you're going cheaper, there's a pretty big price difference from FanDuel to DraftKings with Dirk Nowitzki. $6,800 on FanDuel, but just $5,800 on DK. I know it's a Jazz, but I mean, Dirk's been quietly getting it done against the Jazz over the last year and a half there. I mean, he's averaged 21 and 9 in 3 games against the Jazz last season, shooting 55%. Went 19-4-2 against them earlier this season, shooting over 60% from the field. He's a guy who can spread the floor and drop the threes down, kind of avoid that interior defense from Utah. So I think he kind of gets a pass for me tonight against this front court. I think Dirk is going to be actually a sneaky play. I definitely like him way more on DK. FanDuel is not really in play for me. But the Jazz, they rank 24th in opponent 3-point percentage, just 14th in opponent field goal percentage. So I think their slow pace of play and interior defense is why you really fade guys against them. But Dirk can kind of exploit that tonight. So averaging 17 and 6 in the last 6 games, I really don't mind him for 5,800 on DK there. If you're looking a little bit cheaper, Jabari Parker, come off some down games lately, but if you look at before that, average 16 and 7, 17 and 5, 7 and 8, 15 and 7. Gets a nice matchup against Boston. They struggle rebounding. They're ranked 20th. They are a tougher defense, shooting the ball wise, but Parker can get down low and make some plays. So I don't mind him at that price. I think you're taking a lot of risk as you're going lower. If Hassan Whiteside sits tonight, you're going to see a bump for Amari Stoudemire, but it's not a great matchup for a lot of those big men there in that game. So looking at guys like David West, Boris Diaw, Amari Stoudemire, yes, they're cheap, yes, they're fillers, but I'm not expecting a ton out of them tonight. I think really that game in general is going to be more suited for the guards, but I'm not even expecting a ton out of the guards. I think it's going to be just pretty balanced offense all around. I don't see a lot of upside outside of Leonard in that game. Moving over to center, love Greg Monroe tonight. I love his price on DK. He is your top price guy next to Howard on FanDuel, but 6,700 on DK. Come out some down games, I guess you can call them. 14 and 9, 17 and 8 with 3 assists in the last 2 games. Played Utah and Portland. But I mean, he was extremely efficient the previous couple weeks, and I love that price tag for his. He's just always a consistent double-double threat. He dropped 17 and 14 on Boston earlier this season. As I mentioned, they struggle rebounding the ball. They struggle against centers. So, just in an up-tempo game, they're going to create a ton of rebounds, a ton of production for Milwaukee as well. So I think Monroe's easily your safest center tonight. I think Howard, you kind of like him a little bit for upside. If that game stays close, if he plays more than 30 minutes, which is always iffy, but he's kind of a sneaky play tonight, Howard, as well, especially at the same price tag as Monroe on FanDuel, and a bit more expensive there. If you're looking at cheaper guys, Jared Sullinger's kind of the guy I've had my eye on for GPPs on DraftKings there. 35, 32, and 26 in the last 3 games. And, if you're looking at the defensive production, he's averaging about a block and a steal per game, which is always nice to see. Shooting the ball really well, 51% in the last 6 games. Definitely just a GPP, just because I like paying up for playing 2 centers. I like to do the 2 center strategy there. It's just an easy call for me there. So I like Sullinger and GPPs tonight. I think at that price, it just seems right, especially with guys like Gobert, Zaza not in the greatest spots. Tim Duncan out tonight. Not a big fan of Robin Lopez at his price or in his matchup, even though he's been playing pretty well, but definitely more up and down. So I think Sullinger's more your safer GPP option if you're going that route. A guy who's probably going to be really much higher owned than maybe he should be is Mo Spates. He's going to get a minutes bump. Steve Kerr has already said he's going to see an increased role off the bench with Ezeli out with knee surgery. 115, 2-2 with the block in just 17 minutes. We obviously know he's a big fantasy points per minute producer. So if he sees 20, 22 minutes tonight, he's definitely an option. I think he's a nice GPP move. I think Stars and Scrubs, he kind of fits in there, but definitely a risky play. That's going to wrap things up for the Minutes to Win It. Check out Daily Fantasy Cafe for all our great tools and content.